If you've tried learning Japanese, you've probably encountered the three writing systems used to construct sentences, which are hiragana, katakana, and kanji. At some point during the process, you've probably paused and asked yourself, why are there three of them? And for those of you looking for a quick answer, the issue can mostly be summarized by homophones, sentence flow, and cultural reasons. As for those of you who have more time on your hands, let's delve into the history of the Japanese writing system. Despite Japan's extensive history, little is known about the origin of the spoken language. Some have hypothesized that it originated from farming communities that migrated from the Korean peninsula, although that is not totally accepted. Others have theorized that it has roots in the Ural-Altaic language family since they share a mother tongue, while other linguists think that Japanese is an isolated language that has no relationship with others. The only thing that can be stated objectively is that no one objectively knows where the language came from. Luckily, this issue does not apply to the writing system. Despite having a spoken language, Japan did not originally have a writing system. During the 5th century, Buddhist missionaries introduced kanji to the Japanese islands. Since most aristocrats and intellectuals learned Chinese, official documents were written and read in Chinese during the Nara period. This practice continued into the Heian period with the emergence of a new system called kanbun. Chinese text was made use of with diacritical marks, allowing Japanese speakers to read Chinese sentences and restructure them into Japanese ones. This was done by changing the grammar, such as word order, adding particles, and changing verb endings. For this reason, most kanji have two ways of being read. The Chinese way is known as onyomi, while the Japanese way is known as kunyomi. There are also cases of kanji with multiple Chinese readings due to words being reintroduced from different parts of China at different times. There may also be several native Japanese readings for a kanji if it is used for more than one meaning. This can be distinguished by the okurigana, which is when a kana is placed after the kanji. Eventually, a new system was developed known as manyogana, which took the phonetic values of kanji and ignored their inherent meaning. This system honestly made no sense as it used over 900 characters to represent the 90 phonetic sounds in Japanese. The symbols selected to represent these sounds could be done so without any real rhyme or reason. They were also mixed with Chinese characters, which added to the confusion since they looked very similar. The reason this was an issue is because Chinese characters had both phonetic and semantic values, while the Japanese characters only had phonetic values. While this system was inefficient and time-consuming, it was eventually developed into the beloved hiragana and katakana systems we are familiar with today. Let's start with katakana first. Katakana is the phonetic syllabary that was developed around the 8th to 9th century. It was derived from the Chinese characters by Buddhist monks with the purpose of simplifying the writing of manyongana characters. If you look carefully, you could see that each katakana character comes from a part of a kanji. I'm not always entirely sure how, but they do. At the time, katakana was used primarily by men and appeared in official documentation alongside kanji. It was used in notations to help remember how to read certain words. During the 9th century, women didn't have the same access to education that men did. This eventually led the women of the Heian court to create hiragana, the alternative name of which is onade, which means women's writing. This syllabary was made to be simpler and more accessible. One issue that existed at the time was the lack of a universal symbol for each kana. As a result, hentaigana came into existence, which were variations in the writing of the symbols. After World War II, the Japanese scripts reform was put into action with the purpose of connecting the written language and the spoken one. One official symbol was established for each kana, effectively abolishing hentaigana. This action was most likely taken because the Japanese government was tired of being mistaken for perverts. On a more serious note, I don't know why they didn't just establish universal symbols to begin with. It could have saved a lot of trouble. The Japanese scripts reform also established a set of kanji to be learned in elementary schools, known as the Toyo kanji. The Toyo kanji have now been replaced by the Joyo kanji, which consists of 2,136 characters. Finally, the Japanese scripts reform led to the establishment of loanwords, foreign words of other languages which are commonly represented with katakana.
Aircon.
All of this takes us to the
present day.
Currently, the Japanese language is comprised of the three writing systems I've mentioned before: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. Hiragana and katakana are the two phonetic syllabaries that are comprised of 46 characters. There used to be 48, but we and we have been deemed obsolete kana, and are now reserved for things such as names and onomatopoeias. If you take a close look at this table, you will notice that there are 5 vowels at the right side, 40 syllables, and the letter N. Now, what's worth noting is that these 40 syllables are a combination of a consonant and one of these vowels, meaning that this table follows a trend. Except when it doesn't. F*** you! I wanted to make a quick little revision on this part of the video. This is exactly why you shouldn't rely on Romaji too much, because I am a Westerner. I came with the perspective of a Westerner when looking at this table, and I didn't focus on the reading beforehand, so it may look like this would be read out as fu. It's actually not. It's more like fu, fu, fu. It's like the Japanese R, where you have to understand how to read it first for it to make sense. I can't make this sound. I'm not even gonna embarrass myself. I'll link the channel that I learned this from. They're called Speak Japanese Naturally. And I'll eventually make a video talking about all these like pronunciation scenarios. Anyways, let's get back to the video. You can also modify these base characters using Dakuten and Handakuten. I apologize if I butchered that. This will allow you to make new sounds. And you can create even more new sounds by combining certain symbols with smaller symbols, such as sha and gyo. I will cover this in another video because I don't want to make this topic too broad. As for the differences between hiragana and katakana, you will notice that hiragana has rounder symbols, while katakana has more angular symbols. Let's move on to their uses. Hiragana is used to give tense to verbs and adjectives, join sentences, and the like. It is also primarily used in okurigana and furigana. On the other hand, katakana is used for loanwords, proper nouns that lack a kanji equivalent, automatopoeias, and a few other things. It can also be used to make text stand out. Think of italics. With all that out of the way, let's return to kanji. Kanji is made up of ideograms, which means that they represent a concept or an idea. Except for when they don't. Some kanji may represent words, in which case they are known as logographs. If they represent ideas, they are known as ideographs, and if they are phonetic, they are known as ateji. In general, kanji is used for writing nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and verbs. They can have anywhere from one reading to many readings. One important thing to note is that all kanji have one radical, or bushu. This is the primary component of the kanji, which is used to help categorize it in a dictionary, and it reveals something about the nature of the kanji itself. Now, radicals are your friends, since, as I mentioned, they can help you navigate the dictionary, they can help simplify the process of writing new symbols because you'll know the stroke order, and it will help you guess the meaning of unfamiliar words, since you will have a general idea of the nature of the radical. It has been a topic of debate if the written aspect of Japanese is dying out, as less people are able to write kanji. Since technology is able to convert Romaji to kanji, the need to know how to write these symbols is slowly being forgotten. And if you just noticed, I brought up a new term that is known as Romaji, being the fourth system used in the Japanese language.
You can relax, that was a joke.
Romaji is, simply put, the romanization of the Japanese language, where you transliterate Japanese using the Latin script. This brings us to rule number 1 of Japanese Club. If you want to learn Japanese, don't rely on Romaji. There are no other rules.
Whoa, hold on. What the hell happened to you?
This brings us to the final point of this entire video. Why does Japanese need 3 writing systems? Or more specifically, why can't you write everything using only hiragana, since it can represent every word? And the answer is there are quite a few reasons, the first of which are homonyms. For the uninformed, homonyms are words that are spelt and read the same, but they have different meanings depending on the usage or context. Since there are so many homonyms in Japanese, you can't simply write everything in hiragana as it would become very confusing very quickly. Even with context, this process can still be confusing. By writing in kanji, you can be a lot more specific and lessen the risk of being misconstrued. Another reason that is worth mentioning is culture. As you can probably imagine, the process of changing a language is very difficult. Even if it were possible, many would prefer not to compromise their cultural values in the pursuit of a more accessible language, at least not to such an extreme degree. The idea of writing in only hiragana is viewed as juvenile and inefficient. While this next point isn't quite as compelling as the last two, it's still worth mentioning that Japanese does not utilize spaces. When you write a sentence with only hiragana, it is the equivalent of writing an English sentence like this. Maybe you can read it, but let's be real. Would you want to write like this all the time? Probably not. By using kanji, the main points of a sentence can easily be identified, and it creates a nice flow between the kanji and the hiragana, katakana as well if you really need to. Finally, since each system has its own respective uses, there isn't really a point in getting rid of any of them. That's all, folks. If there were any mistakes in this video, feel free to let me know in the comments and I will make the appropriate corrections in the near future. And remember, if someone is talking to you on the street with only their hands, they are either deaf or they're in a gang. You decide.